Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So hello everyone and welcome to Basics, Discussion Circle, and Meditation. My name is Travis. I facilitate this class. So tonight we'll be doing something that's slightly different from what we normally do, or quite a bit different actually. Typically with this class, I lead from kind of that foundation of Theravada Buddhism, which is my main practice, the school of Buddhism I'm the most familiar with. But I went over the different schools of Buddhism last week, and I had mentioned a Tibetan practice that I do use called Deity Yoga. Deity Yoga isn't like a body moving yoga, it's an internal yoga, a meditation. So this is a practice I've found incredibly useful, largely because although I don't talk about it that often, the foundation of my spiritual practice, my own personal spiritual practice, is kind of rooted in shamanism. That's largely what, up until I discovered Buddhism, that's largely what I practiced for the first 17 years of my life. Kind of just being brought up in an environment that interacted with like energy working and that form of spirituality and kind of this contemporary shamanism and readings and Reiki and things like that. And that's kind of the foundation that I came from, or the background that I came from when I came into Buddhism and discovered Buddhism. And I really enjoyed the kind of free form feeling of shamanism and practicing it. So when I initially came to Buddhism, I was really drawn towards Tibetan Buddhism, which is basically shamanic Buddhism. It's what happened when Buddhism came to Tibet and merged with this earth-based spirituality called Bon, B-O-N, that was predominant in Tibet at the time. And that any kind of earth-based spirituality is basically a form of shamanism. So it merged with Bon and it became this Tibetan Buddhism, this kind of esoteric or shamanic Buddhism, right? So I was initially really drawn to that, and I learned some practices from it that I found really valuable. But for myself personally, it didn't have the kind of structure that I needed because I had already spent 17 years kind of working with that shamanic structure, that kind of more free-form ideology. So the Theravada school, with its very strong structure, I found really complemented those previous years of practice. And it was something that I was lacking in those previous years of practice, was this diligence and structure. So we'll be talking a little bit about kind of a shamanic Buddhist practice a bit today. So I'm excited to lead this. This isn't a type of meditation I would normally lead at the temple, just because if someone's coming for the first time and then they're stuck here doing this slightly more out there style of meditation. But since we're online, if you're feeling uncomfortable with the style of meditation, you can click off, and I don't even know who clicked off, and you don't have to feel guilty about it or whatever. So if it's just not your thing, you don't have to do it. So I thought that would be kind of fun for today. So I've never led this style of meditation. I've done this style of meditation. I learned it on a day-long retreat several years ago, 7 years ago. And I really liked it. I went up to Alpine, and a Lama led this like day-long retreat where we did this Deity Yoga. So with that out of the way today will be predominantly a field trip, nice. Today, the way it'll be predominantly different from how we normally lead it is normally I talk for maybe about 5 minutes. We do a meditation, and then I talk after and take questions. Deity Yoga is a little more involved and requires a little more preparation than what I'm usually presenting here. So I won't be talking after the meditation. I'll do kind of all of the talking and foundation laying before the meditation, and then we'll have the meditation, and then we might go a little bit later than normal if you have any questions about the practice. Also, in the description box below, and also in the live chat, wherever that's at for you, I put a link, and it's a link to some photos, because you'll need a visual representation for this type of meditation. It's another reason I wouldn't lead it in person here. But thankfully, you have at least 2 devices near you. So on one device, you can listen to the YouTube talk, and on the other device, you can have a picture of Kuan Yin, which is what the link goes to, pictures and a general outline of this style of meditation. So I highly recommend reviewing that when you get the chance. So first, I'll start with what is a Bodhisattva, because we'll be working with Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, this one right here. So we'll be working with her, and a lot of people have mixed feelings about Bodhisattvas because they'll come to Buddhism oftentimes turning away from or trying to escape more deity-based spiritualities, more deity-based religions, and they're trying to kind of distance themselves from that, get themselves away from that, from any kind of worship or anything that seems similar to that, right? So some people struggle with the concept of a bodhisattva or asking a bodhisattva for help. So I'll go a little bit into what exactly is a bodhisattva, some different ways of perceiving a bodhisattva that might make you more comfortable with it. And then, we'll go from there. So the word bodhisattva means enlightenment being. Bodhi is enlightenment, sattva is being, like a human being. So a bodhisattva is an enlightenment being. It's a being that, for the sake of others, has gotten very close to being fully enlightened, but has made a vow to not become fully enlightened until all other beings are free from suffering. Because when you attain full awakening, full enlightenment, you're freed from the cycle of birth and death. So you check out, you're done. You've paid your dues. Now, it is done, the holy life complete. There is no further becoming, is often what arahats and Buddhists say when they attain awakening. They realize that the task at hand is done, the holy life fulfilled. There is no further becoming. So a bodhisattva puts that off for the sake of others. Until I help all other beings attain liberation, I will not fully enter nirvana. And that's kind of their vow. So they're these beings who are similar in many ways to an angel, but are different in the sense that they were once human beings because we got rebirth. So they were a human being who cultivated a lot of goodness, a lot of merit, a lot of wisdom, a lot of compassion. And then upon being reborn, they're reborn in one of the heavenly realms. And I won't get into cosmology too much here because it's not super relevant. So they're similar to an angel, but they're a self-made angel. No one made them an angel for them. They, through their own efforts and practices, became this kind of angelic-like being, this enlightenment being. And any one of us can do the same thing, right? And ultimately, there's no difference between them and us either, but that's for a little later, right? So this bodhisattva is a being who's made this vow, and then there's someone that you can call on for help. But there's different ways that we can look at this if the idea of it being a literal human being, however many thousand years ago or whatever, that eventually ascended into this bodhisattva being. If that is off-putting for you, there's other ways to look at it, right? If you think, well, what's the historical validity of that or whatever else narrative we might have? You can look at it from kind of a more shamanic point of view, which would be that these are beings that are widely believed by large numbers of people to have such qualities, to behave in such a way. For Kuan Yin, for an example, is the Bodhisattva of compassion. She's believed by millions of people around the world, probably billions of people around the world, that she is the purest embodiment of compassion, and that she will come and help you if you request her help, right? So through the collective consciousness of belief, then regardless whether this Bodhisattva was a real person or is a real entity in any way, shape, or form, through collective belief, it powers something that's called in shamanism a thought form, something that's created through collective belief and is made real through this belief. So because many people have this faith and this conviction in it, their collective subconscious creates this being that's powered by billions of people's belief that you can then call upon for help for your own personal practice. So that's another way of looking at it. So it's not a matter of are they real or are they not. The simple fact that many people believe in them contributes to their existence. That's one of the ways I like to look at it. And then if that's still too woo-woo for you, you can think of them as something similar to a Jungian archetype. The psychologist Carl Jung described these aspects of mind, these narratives of mind that were kind of like their own being or their own subset of consciousness that come pre-installed in everyone. You had things like the sage, the outlaw, the traveler, the jester, the everyman, and these kind of psychological narratives that we have kind of pre-programmed into us. And that's more of the psychological take on it. You could think of these bodhisattvas as symbolic representations of these similar archetypes, these similar structures of consciousness, right? So however you want to look at it, that makes you comfortable. Their bodhisattvas are a very valuable resource to draw on in your practice. So yeah. So the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. The Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, which is pictured up here and is also pictured in the document that's either down in the description box or in the chat, is this embodiment of compassion. And it's kind of important to understand that these bodhisattvas are largely based on symbolism. There's no decorative flourishes added to them that don't have a symbolic meaning or purpose. So with Kuan Yin, if you look on the document that I sent, the first two pictures, she's holding a tree branch and the vase. And our Kuan Yin here is making a mudra and is holding the vase kind of downward where it's pouring out. So the vase represents compassion, and it's filled with the purest water, the divine water, and it's this healing, compassionate energy. And the idea is that she's holding the vase down, letting it pour out, but the vase never empties because it's this bottomless compassion. So that's kind of the vase. And then in the pictures that I sent, she's holding the vase like this, and she has a tree branch. And the tree branch is a willow tree, and it represents flexibility, being able to bend without breaking. So there's all the suffering and pain in the world, and you want to be compassionate, but that willow tree represents being flexible with it, not letting yourself being broken down by the sufferings in this world, being able to bend with it, not break. And then it's also the idea that the willow tree, the branch is kind of used to dip in the vase and sprinkle out blessings too. So that's kind of the general gist of it. And then she's wearing a full white robe, which represents purity of the mind. And she's typically sitting on a lotus, which represents not being tainted by the world. And that's that similar quality of not being brought down by all the suffering in the world, being able to be above it, and being able to help others from that elevated place. So that's kind of the symbolism of Kuan Yin. probably talk a little bit more about her another time, because we'll run out of time if I tell like the backstory and all that goodness. But basically, Kuan Yin here, or in India, Avalokiteshvara, or in Tibet, Chenrezig, different names in different cultures, different forms in different cultures. If you've seen the, well, you can't see the walls here, but if you've seen the kind of Tibetan paintings with the 1,000 arms, that's also Kuan Yin. That's Avalokiteshvara. And Kuan Yin's name means hearer of the world's cries. So it's someone who can hear, who can feel the pains of the world and pours out compassion in response. So that's what we'll be doing this deity yoga with today. So in essence, deity yoga, basically the intention behind deity yoga is to embody these qualities of this bodhisattva in our own heart and our own mind. And ultimately to understand that the qualities that this bodhisattva exemplifies already exist within us. You've probably heard about Buddha nature before and things like that, of that we have these innate qualities within ourselves, they're just obscured, where these bodhisattvas represent these qualities being unobscured. So ultimately, there's the relationship between us and this bodhisattva or this deity is non-dual. There's no real distinction between us and them. So this practice is to help us realize that through experience, not just intellectually. So basically, this practice involves 2 stages, this deity yoga. The first one is generation, and then the second stage is completion. And we won't be doing much completion today, but we will be doing some generating, right? So generation has to do with allowing the mundane world that we're in to dissolve away into this kind of intense visualization that we'll be doing. So you dissolve the mundane world and visualize and identify with this more divine reality, or this more pure reality within. And then the completion has to do with, once you identify with that and you see the bodhisattva and you become the bodhisattva, the completion stage is to allow that whole visualization to dissolve into emptiness, which I know sounds alluring, but we won't really be doing that today, because that's not a first time ever trying this type of thing. You can read more about it and get all confused about it and try it on your own, but we won't be doing that part today. So this practice consists of doing kind of heavy visualization. It consists of mantra repetition. And it consists of a bit of body awareness, but it's mainly the visualization and the mantra repetition. So the mantra we'll be working with today is Om Mani Padme Hum, which is available, if you need to look at it, it's available on the resources that I sent. I made 2 pictures that have the mantra written on the photo, so you can use it as a reference while you're doing this. And during the meditation, you don't really need to look at me, so you can bring up the photo of Kuan Yin and use that as the visual anchor. This is an open eyes / close eyes meditation, right? So Om Mani Padme Hum is the mantra that relates to Kuan Yin. Om, or Om, relates to our purest sense of being, or the pure body, or this union of body, mind, and heart. That's Om, or Om. Mani is a gemstone, and gem symbolically represents compassion. Padme means lotus. The lotus represents wisdom. And then Hum means unity or combining. So Om Mani Padme Hum is often translated to I am the jewel in the lotus, which then, if translated into its actual meaning, means to embody compassion that is guided by wisdom. So to embody compassion guided by wisdom. So that's what this mantra means. That's what we'll be repeating. With this practice, you start by repeating the mantra 108 times out loud. Don't worry, I'll keep track of it. There's lots of ways to go about that. One of them is to use a mala, and every mala has 108 beads on it, in addition to the guiding bead. So you can use it kind of like an abacus, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. That can be one way of going about this. What I like to do, though, is count the mantra out 108 times with a stopwatch, and then end the stopwatch. So it's a little less involved, and I don't have to think about how many times I've done it. So I know that it takes me about 5 minutes to say Om Mani Padme Hum 108 times. So I do it for 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So that's basically what we'll be doing there. So we'll start with mantra repetition externally, out loud, while looking at the image of the Bodhisattva. And we'll just work on that. And you can periodically close your eyes while you're chanting to try to visualize the Bodhisattva in the mind. And you're just visualizing them in the mind in front of and floating above you, kind of like they're sending blessings down at you. That's kind of the position. Like the opposite of my position right now. So yeah, basically if I was facing that way, that's the exact position. So with this, you imagine the Bodhisattva, and you imagine the Bodhisattva emanating golden light, or whatever light you want, but typically it's golden light. It can be opal light. It doesn't matter too much. So imagining it emanating this light that gets more and more intense and bigger, this light coming from the Bodhisattva. The more you chant, the brighter it gets. And then from there, I'll probably use the wood clackers, to state when to stop repeating it out loud. And throughout this meditation, you never stop repeating it. You just go from out loud verbally to internally, mentally repeating it. And this whole practice, you're visualizing the Bodhisattva and chanting together. So it's a little more involved than our normal practice. I know some people don't necessarily have mental vision, like where they can imagine things in their head. If you can't, that's okay. Just stare at the picture, repeat the mantra, and that can be the whole meditation. But if you can see things in your head, it's good to use that. Use that to your advantage. So this Bodhisattva becomes really intense light, and I'll clack these. The reason I'm going so thoroughly is I won't be giving guidance during the meditation, because I don't want my words to interrupt the visualization. It's another reason why I don't normally guide it here, because it's not necessarily guided. It's preliminarily explained, right? So 108 times out loud, clack, going internal. And then once you're internal, you stop using the photo as a reference, and you just try to maintain it inside. The light gets brighter and brighter. Eventually the Bodhisattva, clack, clack, the Bodhisattva becomes pure light. And you're imagining that you yourself are sitting in an infinite void, and that Bodhisattva is in front and above you generating light. And that light gets more and more intense. And then when the entire void is filled with this golden light, the Bodhisattva dissolves into the light, and all of the light converges into and around you. So you're wearing the Bodhisattva like robes. Basically, you're wearing this light like a robe. And you just imagining gathering all of that energy, that light into you, and then clack, clack. The light regains its form as the Bodhisattva, where you're then imagining that you yourself have become Kuan Yin. You have become the Bodhisattva. If you're a guy and you're not comfortable becoming Kuan Yin, you can become Avalokiteshvara. There's some other pictures down below. The Tibetan version and the Indian version is masculine. The Asian, the Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese version is feminine. So you could use the other image if you want. I prefer to use the Tibetan imagery because it's a Tibetan practice. So I do usually use Avalokiteshvara, but I know for most of us, we're pretty familiar with Kuan Yin up here, so it'd be easier to have that mental image. So that's this practice. So I'll go over it one more time and then we'll get started. Oh, and then the one last thing I wanted to say too is these qualities that you're trying to emulate and trying to become this Bodhisattva, these qualities already exist within you. The deity is, the Bodhisattva is a reflection of what's already present within you. So imagining yourself becoming the Bodhisattva is to bring out what's latently present within you. It's not just wishful thinking or delusional thinking. It's a visualization with a very strong intended purpose. So we'll chant the mantra out loud for some time. Clack. We repeat the mantra internally. So chanting the mantra out loud while staring at Kuan Yin, the image of Kuan Yin. Ideally, one of the images that I sent, because she's kind of small on here and you don't want to accidentally be me. Trust me. So, so focusing on the image of Kuan Yin, and then occasionally closing the eyes, just trying to internalize the imagery. And then clack, we start chanting internally and we stop opening the eyes to affirm the image. Then we hold that image in the mind. The Bodhisattva generates this golden light that gets stronger and stronger and larger, just continually increasing while still chanting. The Bodhisattva becomes pure light. This entire void becomes pure light, and it converges into and around you, embracing you. The energy regains form, and you become Kuan Yin. And then you're the one emanating this light from you. And then I will likely give some guidance at the end, after that whole process, on what to do with all of the energy that we've accumulated and whatnot. I just don't want to give too much right now. The only thing I will say throughout the meditation is I'll occasionally say Om Mani Padme Hum to remind you to continue chanting that throughout this entire process, but internally, right? So we'll start out loud, clack internally for the rest of the meditation. Any clarity needed, or is that good? We're good. Okay, cool. So pull up your image of Kuan Yin that you can focus on, whatever one you felt the most drawn to, and we'll get started. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum, Om 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 Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 And now, as you've embodied this Bodhisattva, you have become them, and you yourself are radiating this golden light. While still maintaining this mantra in the mind, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. You can begin to feel how this Bodhisattva energy feels throughout the body. From the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, out to the tips of the fingers, and all the way down into the cells of the body. Leaving nowhere unsuffused. Allowing yourself to believe the perception that you have become the Bodhisattva. That you have become an embodiment of compassion and wisdom. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And as you're radiating this gold light, you can begin to condense it back down, condensing all of this Bodhisattva energy into the base of the spine, making it as dense, as condensed as possible. Allowing it to slowly travel up the spine, filling the entire spine. All the way up the neck and into the brain. suffusing the mind with this Bodhisattva energy. And just allowing this energy to completely soak into the spine and the brain. Soak into it so completely that it seems as if it's dissolved away. Where it's no longer something that you're controlling or doing, but this suffusion is simply a natural state of being. You can gently begin to become aware of where your body meets the ground, or where your back meets the chair. Noticing the sounds in the room around you. A sensation of air on the skin. Just gently coming back to this mundane reality. And realizing that the only distinction between this mundane reality that we're in right now and this transcendent reality that we've maintained this past session is our perception. In truth, they really are one and the same. We just perceive and experience them differently. And with that thought in mind, you can begin to open the eyes and stretch if necessary. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to hear them. As I said, this is the first time I've led this style of meditation. I'm curious what you thought of it. I know it may be a bit difficult because there wasn't guided instructions during it. But it's really important to facilitate that kind of vision quest feeling of this style of meditation. So a few things that I'll say about this style of meditation is if you plan on making it a regular practice, it's very beneficial to kind of think of what you really want to emulate, what you really want to embody. maybe what area of your practice needs the most help. Maybe you're a fairly naturally compassionate person, but maybe you don't always make the best choices or something like that. Then perhaps Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, could be a more beneficial practice for you. If you find yourself a very logical person, sometimes overly rational, then this Bodhisattva, Kuan Yin, or Avalokiteshvara is probably a good fit for you. If you find yourself very lazy and unmotivated, then Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great practice, may be a good match for you. It's just a matter of finding which Bodhisattva most symbolizes the opposite of your weak points, and developing and maintaining a relationship with that Bodhisattva, learning their mantra, learning the meaning of their mantra, and learning the various symbolism throughout them, like the meaning of Manjushri's sword, or the lotus with a text on it, things like that. And another thing, if you plan on making this a consistent practice, if you found this powerful, it can be very helpful to have some kind of physical totem of the Bodhisattva. I'm wearing here a Kuan Yin necklace for a Kuan Yin meditation. It just can be helpful to have something that kind of gets imbued with that Bodhisattva energy while you're doing the practice, and it lasts a little longer than we do because the stone's a lot more stable than we are. So we do have one question. So Daniel shared, wow, that was really great. Was the energy going into our spines a part of the completion phase, or would that be more dissolving away? Also, how are the Vajra and bell used? So you picked up on that. Yes, the energy going into the spine is part of the completion phase. So the completion phase basically takes two forms. One is this kind of, with the generation, you begin to identify with the Bodhisattva. You dissolve the boundary between yourself and the Bodhisattva, where you become them. You embody them and you identify as them. And then with the completion phase, you go one step further, where with generation, you dissolve mundane reality and tune into this kind of transcendent spiritual reality. And then with completion, you dissolve this transcendent spiritual reality into shunyata, or emptiness. And that's kind of the actualization of these qualities, using the Bodhisattva to help you get to that kind of realization. But another version of completion, depending on the schools of Buddhism, or the schools of Vajrayana, because there's different sects within Tibetan Buddhism. Part of another version of that is, instead of dissolving into the emptiness, it's using subtle energy, using the subtle body, using energy, and channeling that through the Tibetan version of the chakras, because they have their own version of it, their own interpretation of it, right? So channeling it through that. So instead of going through in detail with an unfamiliar chakra system with people, I just have condensed energy raise up. And then the completion, the aspect of it that's the most similar to the completion is that energy's soaking into the spine, into the mind, to where it's no longer there because it's become you. It's no longer an energy that you're generating and controlling. It becomes a natural state. That's kind of the completion aspect there. The use of the Vajra and bell. So if you did this type of meditation with the Tibetan Lama, you would be chanting out loud the entire time. I just really didn't feel like doing that. So I shortcut. But they would be using the bell occasionally. And it's just kind of believed to break up the staleness of the environment. The sound kind of ripples through the room and keeps things fresh. And they'll have a bell in one hand, right? And in in the other hand, they have this little, it kind of looks like the little hammer with the ball that you try to get the ball onto the hammer, but it's a little drum and it has two of those little balls hanging from it. And they do this and it creates a drumming noise that they're doing the entire time while you're chanting. So they would have the bell in one hand using it and then the drum in the other hand. And that's just to help facilitate this kind of trance-like super focused state. The bell breaks up the monotony and the drum provides a baseline just like the chanting does to create something that we can dissolve into where we're not focused on our sense of self or our environment. We're being kind of nestled by the sounds, if that makes sense. I highly recommend if you have the chance to go to a Deity Yoga session or a Bodhisattva empowerment, sometimes they're called Bodhisattva empowerment session. Highly recommend going when we can again. Marisa shared, I really enjoyed this. For some reason, I had trouble maintaining Kuan Yin in my mind. But before the light enveloped me, I had a clear vision of a childhood memory. I knew that I need to focus my compassion on my parents right now. Wonderful. Yeah, this kind of shamanic Buddhist practice can bring up a lot of stuff too. It's a pretty powerful practice because it's that bodhisattva compassion and wisdom kind of, when it's suffusing within us, we can see things. It's kind of like how our close friends can see a lot of the nonsense that we have better than we can because we're caught up in it. But our close friends can be like, dude, what are you doing? You know better than that. Be like, oh, right, I am doing that thing that I know better to be doing. So it's kind of like having that quality of a best friend with this bodhisattva, except we're becoming the bodhisattva, so we can see our own mind from someone else's perspective, and it's easier to see things that we would normally miss. Yeah. So we'll close there. Is there anything else? I think that's it. I'll probably remember as soon as I end the live stream, but we'll see. So with that, we'll close with a transfer of merit. If comfortable, please join palms. May any merit gained from this meditation and discussion be dedicated to all those who suffer at this time. May all beings in all directions, without limit or exception, be healthy, joyful, and at ease. May we all be healthy, joyful, and at ease. May we realize the Bodhisattva within ourselves. Metta karuna mudita upekkha sangha teya cetasa chaturisam bharatva viharati sukham supati sukham pati pujati Sambandha rupa vena sambandhamma rupa vena sabha sangha rupa vena sote hantu nirantaram. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. If you liked this style of meditation and this approach, let me know. If you didn't like the style of meditation or approach, let me know. Thank you all.